The Storyteller Scandal, La Velita de los Cuentos. It's a beautiful book. And I really, I talk about these books like my children because they are. But this is a very special book. I think it's a book that tells a story about another Puerto Rican, Pura Belpré, a librarian, the first Puerto Rican and Latina librarian in the public libraries of New York, who was called upon when, back in the 1930s, during the recession, there was a wave of migration from Puerto Rico of a lot of Puerto Ricans looking for jobs and came to establish themselves in what we call today Spanish Harlem, El Barrio. And Pura Belpré was called upon to see how she could what could she do to bring these new immigrants into the library? These immigrants came with the ideas that the libraries were not for children. And in the libraries of New York, how could they find books in Spanish, in Espanol? So they never dare go inside. It is a beautiful story that I knew not as much as to, initially, until I read all the research that Lucia Gonzalez, the author of the book, made. Lucia and I are very good friends, and Lucia herself is a librarian, a public librarian, a puppeteer, a storyteller, and of course an author, very much in the same way that Pura was. And we get along very well, and when she told me that she wanted me to illustrate this book, I thought it's a marvelous combination. And the first thing that I did in terms of research was actually travel to Miami, meet with her, talk to her. Through her, I read everything that she had read because she had kept everything. And then, of course, the research, I needed to know about Pura before starting to illustrate the book for Lucia. But also then, I went a step beyond. Then I needed to know how to put the illustrations of the book in its historical context. And this is really the very first picture book that I do that is historical fiction. And so in those terms, I really spent a lot of time trying to figure this out. I mean, of course, the very obvious things are to draw the cars of the times, to draw the buildings of the times, the clothing that the people were wearing. That's obvious. But what else can you do? How can you go beyond what is the obvious? So one of the things that I did is to really, because one of the things that I did in order to research for the pictures themselves was to go to the library of, the New York Public Digital Library. And in the New York Public Digital Library, I found amazing pictorial material of photos of those times. And using those photos, that helped me, draw the things the way that they used to be back then, including the building, 115th Street branch of the New York Public Library. But also, these photos influenced me in the way that I decided to start all illustrations in sepia. Every single picture in that book started entirely in sepia tones, and the values were all done in sepia. And then I started layering the colors. But there was one other thing that I added, and this is again a first for me. With each book that I illustrate, I actually let the manuscript talk to me and tell me what is it that the illustration should be. And in this book, it was the same. I kept thinking that there was something else that I could do for this manuscript in order to put it in that historical context. And that's when I said, well, how if the illustration could enlarge what the text says in other forms than just simply with a drawing? How about if the reader could know what was going on at the same time that the story takes place, how do I do that? And that's when I got the idea of doing collage, but collage using the New York Times of the 6th of January of 1930, which I got through the internet. There are now outfits in the internet that sell these old issues. And when I got that newspaper and I opened the package where it came, and I flipped through the very brittle and yellow pages, I found treasures. Treasures, because all of a sudden, in that illustration where I have Ildamar and Santiago, the main characters of the book, walking through the street, reminiscing about the time that they came in the summer, that they came and they left the island of Puerto Rico, and they came in this boat, in this steamboat, I found that for that illustration, I could actually place the sidewalk. The sidewalk was going to be the list of the steamships that arrived on the 6th of January of 1930, coming a list that says Puerto Rico, because it wasn't Puerto Rico back then. It was spelled Puerto Rico. And, from San Lorenzo and from San Juan, there were steamships coming. So I said, that's one example. For every single illustration, I found a piece, an article, something that could add another dimension to that picture. Almost like treasures that the careful reader will find perhaps on a second or third reading.